Hello everybody, welcome back to another exciting edition of Ed Puzzle Lecture Notes. Today we're going to go over the brain stem, which consists of the medulla or the medulla oblongata, that is the most inferior or the lowest. Then you got the pons, it's in the middle, and then the midbrain, which would be the most superior portion of the brain stem. And our daily learning objectives. So when you're done with these lecture notes today, hopefully you can do some or all of these. So first, identify the structures of the brainstem. So you should be able to point out, hey, that's the pons, or hey, that's the medulla. You should be able to identify where it's at. And maybe most importantly, describe their functions. So not only do you know where they're at, but also what do they do. All right, so the medulla oblongata right here, the most inferior part of the brain stem, and it connects the brain stem with the spinal cord. Functions: force and rate of your heartbeat. So it helps to control the force and rate of the heartbeat, also the diameter of your blood vessels. So this is largely due by the vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10. So if it increases the diameter of the blood vessels, that's going to lower your blood pressure, and also force and rate of the heartbeat. Now that's the cardiovascular center in the medulla. Another thing it does, it sets basic rhythm of breathing. So it gives you that rhythm of your breathing, the in and the out, and you don't even have to think of it. That is controlled by the medulla oblongata. And it also has reflex centers for things like coughing, sneezing, swallowing, vomiting, that's a hiccough, and yawning. All of those controlled by the medulla oblongata. All right, now a little diagram of the medulla oblongata. What you're going to know here, the 12 cranial nerves, you're going to have to know like 4 of them. I know this is one of them. Number 10, the vagus nerve. And what you need to know, here it is right here, that one of the 12, the vagus nerves. So these are cranial nerves. They branch off from the brain, not from the spinal cord. And what you'll need to know about the vagus nerve is that it has a parasympathetic, there we go, function. So if you remember the autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, elevates blood pressure, your breathing rate, sweating. Well, this is the opposite of that. This is the parasympathetic. So that's going to lower your resting heart rate. That's going to lower your breathing rate. It's also going to increase digestion, because remember, parasympathetic was rest and digest. So that's the function of the vagus nerve. Another thing you're going to see here is what's called the decussation of pyramids. This is where your sensory and motor nerves actually cross over. They cross over here at what's called the decussation of pyramids in the medulla. So this is why the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and vice versa. The right side of your brain controls the left side of your body. And that occurs right there at the decussation of the pyramids. You can see those nerve tracks crossing over right there in what's called contralateral. It's called contralateral. And all that means is that the left side of your brain, the nerves cross over and control the right side of the body. If it controlled the same side of the body, it would be called ipsilateral. But no, it's contralateral because it controls the opposite side of the body. And I guess I shouldn't have talked about the decussation of the pyramids, because here it is. So decussation of the pyramids, this is where the nerve fibers are going to cross over. So fibers that originate on the left side of the brain are going to cross over and go to the right side of the body. And fibers that begin in the right side of the brain are going to cross over and end in the left side of the body. And this basically says what I just said. So if they originate in the right cerebral cortex, it's going to go to the left side of the body. It's going to control the left side. Same thing with sensory information. So if it's sensory information that's occurring on the left side of your body, it's going to end up on the right side of your brain. And remember, that's called contralateral, which basically means it's the opposite side of the brain that controls The left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. That's contralateral. Same thing with your eyes. There's eyes. Some of your visual information, so say this is your left eye right there, some of the visual information crosses over and goes to the right side of your brain, where also some of your visual information stays on the same side. So your left eye would go to the left side of your brain, but in some of your visual information it actually crosses over and goes to the right side of your brain. So this would be like your nose. If it stays on the same side, that's called ipsilateral. And if it crosses over to the opposite side, that's called contralateral. All right, now once again, time for a little brain break. So here's your riddle for the day. What thing actually becomes wetter as it is drying? So what thing actually becomes wetter as it is drying? See if you can get that right. And the answer, of course, is a towel. And now moving on to the middle portion of the brain stem called the pons. So we have the medulla oblongata. So it is superior to the medulla. That means it's above the medulla. It's inferior to the midbrain. And some of its functions, obviously it's part of the connecting that helps connect the brain and the spinal cord. Here's another very important function. It connects the cerebellum basically to the rest of the brain. So here, right here, you have the cerebellum, and this guy's very important. It's for like coordinating muscle movements. So like if you're a good dancer, your brain is telling your primary motor cortex is initiating the movements, but it's the cerebellum that kind of smooths all those movements out and allows you to know where you are in space. So it's very important in coordinating your muscle movements. And that's one of the features of the pons, that it is the connection. It is the bridge that allows the cerebellum, connects it to the rest of the brain and spinal cord. All right, so now some more stuff on the pons. So here it is right here. It's the middle. So the medulla oblongata is just inferior to the pons, and the midbrain right here will be just superior to the pons. Now you're not going to need to know these exact terms, like right here, the pneumotaxic area, but you will need to know the functions. So remember, the medulla set the rhythm of breathing. This prevents the lungs from becoming too full of air. So basically it stops your inhalation or your inspiration before your lungs get too full of air. Also the apneustic area, once again you won't need to know that term, but you will know that it also has to do with breathing. So it stimulates inspiration during deep inhalations. So remember, the medulla was the rhythm of the breathing. This basically stops the breathing and keeps your lungs from being too full of air, and also controls the deep inhalation, stimulates that. And like I said earlier, it is the connection, it is the bridge between the cerebrum, your conscious mind, and the cerebellum, the little part of the brain right here that helps coordinate and smooth out muscle movements, so your muscle movements aren't all herky-jerky. They're much smoother. And the last one here, we got the midbrain. Midbrain is located just superior to the pons, located just superior and anterior to the cerebellum, and just inferior to the thalamus and just posterior of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. And I'll be honest with you, the most important thing here is in red. Reflexes. So, as you are scanning, if you're reading this from left to right and your eyes are following the words, that is the eye scan reflex. So your eyes are able to scan either visual stimuli and follow them very smoothly. You don't have to think about it because that's a reflex that originates in the midbrain. And that reflex originates in what's called a location of the midbrain called the superior colliculi. Do not think you'll have to know that, but might as well write it down just in case. It also where your startle reflex originates. So if you hear auditory or some sort of loud sound and it scares you, that startle reflex originates in the midbrain. And I don't know why I started at the bottom and go up, but also these are what's called cerebral peduncles, which are basically just motor tracks. So that's where ascending sensory nerves are passed on to the cerebrum, and descending motor nerves or tracks go right through the midbrain in what's called the cerebral peduncles. Is that super important? I don't believe so, because I don't think it was on our test last year, and it probably won't be this year, but write it down just in case. And a little diagram of the dorsal surface of the midbrain. So remember, dorsal, that's towards the back. So this is the back of the brain stem. So I don't think you're going to need to know this, but why not put it in here? Here's the superior colliculi or colliculus. And remember, that is where the eye scanning reflex, so you can scan, you can move your head and scan and track visual objects with your eyes because of that reflex that originates right there in the superior colliculus, or colliculi for plural. And here's the inferior colliculi or colliculus, and that is where the auditory information comes in. It gets innervated by sensory auditory neurons, which gives you that startle reflex. That happens in the inferior colliculi. You're going to need to know this? I don't think so. And last but not least, we have these scattered nuclei in the medulla, the pons, and the midbrain called the reticular formations. Reticular formation. Basically, you need to know their function. And it's got, where is it at? The reticular activating system. So there it is again right here. The reticular activating system. It's basically what keeps you awake. It maintains consciousness in the sleep-awake cycles from stimuli from your ears, eyes, etc. So this is what happens when you hear your alarm in the morning. It is your reticular formation that's scattered throughout the entire brain stem that awakens you from sleep. That is what you're going to need to know about the reticular formations. It's what awakens you from sleep. And this is why people that are stuck in a coma, it's their inability, their RAS, their reticular activating system is inactive, and that would cause them to not be able to wake up. And the last little feature of the reticular formation, they do have a motor function. So descending, so your brain, descending motor tracks or motor neurons, they go through the reticular formation and it helps to regulate muscle tone. So basically, like when you're standing up, it helps to maintain posture and balance when you're standing up or during body movements. So it basically keeps your bodies in the correct position as, say, you're standing there or walking around. It makes tiny little adjustments to keep your posture and balance in order. All right, now a little quizzy. So I'm going to ask these questions and we'll see how you do. All right, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.